Yeah, it's perfectly visible.
Okay, thank you, Mr.
Yeah,
Can I begin now?
please.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'm not sure whether, I mean, first of all, thank you to Professor Mishra for allowing me to, be in this session. And it's a privilege to talk to, faculty colleagues, and, at other places. What I expect from this, session is, I will be talking about different aspects of decision making, both at the, workplace as well as at home. I have already shared the PowerPoints with, Professor Mishra. I believe all the participants have received it and have at least got some chance to go through it. May not have got much time to go through it, but at least had a look at the slides.
Sorry
Right?
to interrupt, Professor Nayak. I have not been able
Yeah.
to share the slides with the participants because of some time constraint. Because
Okay. No problem then. Anyway, I mean, the slides are there, so they can be shared later. It's not a problem. Yeah. Uh, Fine. So, okay, no problem. I mean, if the slides have not been shared, that's all right, because we'll be talking about various aspects of decision making, both at workplace and home. I'll be talking about some of the commonsensical notions about what constitutes decision making. It's not that I mean, we do not make decisions. We make decisions on a daily basis. So we'll be talking about some of those, and we'll also see if there is a structured way in which we can handle our decision making, because there are times when we handle in a structured manner. There are times when we do not get time to do it. Okay, so we'll be talking about different aspects of decision making. It is interesting that and it's very important that we understand that decision making in this particular session we are talking about not just at the workplace but at home, because what happens is sometimes the decisions that you take at home sometimes invariably influence your decisions at work. So because you are the same person, however much you may want to compartmentalize your decision making at home and at workplace, it doesn't eventually work that way. Okay, so these are some of the concepts that we'll be discussing. And please, I mean, I request the participants to please feel free to intervene at any point that they wish to. Okay, yeah. So let me move to the first slide. Okay, so what exactly is decision making? Okay, if you can see the slide, we are talking about first of all decision is something that you just randomly decide. Okay, I need to do this, or as a group we need to do this. Okay, the first and most important thing that you need to know in terms of decision is that decision making is a process, or at least it is supposed to be a process. Okay, just like when we teach students aspects of, let's say, writing, we say that writing is a process. So you have to do good, you have to do brainstorming. You have to first make I mean, a rough note of what are the different ideas that you want to express in front of your audience or target readers. Similarly, decision making also is a process. That's the first thing that you need to learn. Okay, so and it's a mental process that all human beings are involved in throughout their lives. Okay, we make decisions every single day. Not a single day goes by when we take a decision. The decision to not take a decision also is a decision. Okay, so the point is, all human beings, that is our that's the nature of our job. We need to make decisions. Okay, some decisions are such that will impact our lives to the extent that I mean, the life will become a different kind of life afterwards. Okay, so those are called path breaking decisions. Those are decisions that on which the life can turn completely differently. Okay, so those are exceptional circumstances where you make those decisions, but on a daily basis also we make decisions. What I'm saying here is the first and most important thing that we need to acknowledge is that decision making is a process. It's a mental process that all of us are involved in throughout our lives. Okay, and when we take decision, what exactly is a decision? The decision is basically to choose one of the many alternatives possible. Okay, so there are many possible alternatives. So you have to decide which is the alternative that best me or best suits the organization or best the interests of an individual or a group. Okay. So basically you have to select one course of action from among several alternatives. That is the standard definition of decision making. Okay. Now, what you also need to see here is that decisions are not just taken randomly without thinking about it. So it is a conscious process. It is a cognitive process. Okay, it's a conscious process. You have to consciously decide this is something that I need to do. When we decide that this is something that I need to do, it is a rational process. I have to rationalize why certain decisions have to be made. And the moment you make a decision, you're basically making a decision that you are not going to make the other kinds of decisions. You understand what I'm saying? The point I'm trying to make here is, even when you decide that this is something that I want to do, that decision to do something also automatically comprises several other alternatives or decisions that you are not going to take. Okay, that is why I said it's a process, it's a conscious process, it's a rational process where you choose one course of action from among several alternatives. Okay, and it's a cognitive process. You have to use your brain. Sometimes some decisions are made by heart. Okay, you decide. Okay, emotionally you feel that this is something that you need to do emotionally, but rationally you need to judge whether which is more important in this case. Okay. In fact, day after tomorrow I'll be taking another session where I will specifically talk about this, handling emotions in decision making. That is a significant aspect of decision making. For today's session, we are not going to talk about that much regarding how to handle or what are the ways in which you can handle emotions. It's not easy, but how do you do that? Okay. But today we are talking about the decision making is a process. It is a cognitive process, a conscious process. It is not a spur of the moment thing. The moment it becomes a spur of the moment thing, then most likely the decision may not be correct, may not be right. Okay. Now, increasing effectiveness in decision making is an important part of maximizing your effectiveness at work. What does that mean? That basically means, especially in workplace, in case, if you are not taking effective decisions which will have, which will not be effective. That basically means it will lead you to a path where you may have to take several other decisions to undo what you did in that first decision. Because we say that, decision basically means you choose a course of action. You choose a specific course of action instead of choosing some other courses of action. You choose one alternative. If your decision making is not effective, doesn't give the desired result, then you will be forced to make several other decisions to undo what you did previously. So that is why, especially in a workplace, at home also that is correct. But at home, I'll talk about that later. At home, sometimes the decision can be less rational. Okay. At home, when you make decisions, they can be less rational, but at workplace, it has to be more rational. Okay. So that is one distinction that you need to make. But both are processes. Both are processes. At workplace or at home, decisions are processes. They are not spur of the moment decisions. Especially at workplace, spur of the moment decisions are going to be counterproductive. They are not going to be productive. Okay? They are not going to give desired results. Okay. Now each decision-making process ends in a final choice. Each decision-making process ends in a final choice. The output is an action or an idea. Now this is something that I must explain. Okay. See, that will be an output. The moment you take decision, you have to make a final choice. You choose, you have several options, several alternatives, and then finally you make a choice that this is something that I need to do. So that output could be an action, that could be an idea also. It's not that, there has to be, earlier I used the phrase that you have to take a course of action. Yes, but the course of action does not mean it is only action. It could be an idea that you say, okay, this is something that this is the idea that we need to pursue. This is an idea that we need to follow. So that also is part of the decision-making process. Does somebody want to say something? Okay, fine. Then what we also need to see is that this is the process of decision making is done on the basis of culture, perceptions, belief systems, values, attitudes, personality, knowledge, and the insight of the individuals. Now, all of you, understand these concepts. Okay, so I don't need to go into this, but all I'm saying is, so the moment you say that an individual makes a choice, so that makes a decision, that decision is, influenced by not just that person's, perceptions, but can also be about, cultural beliefs, values, attitudes, everything comes into it. because we are, we are not just one, as an individual. I am, let's say I'm a faculty member, I'm an administrator, but I am so many other things. I'm an Indian, I have a certain kind of attitude towards life, I have a certain kind of belief system. So all of that invariably, consciously and sometimes unconsciously, that determines the kind of decision that you arrive at the end. Okay? Yeah. So decisions may affect the lives of others and change the course of an organization. So especially if you are in a position of power, the decision, would, the decision that you eventually, take, that decision will not just impact you. Okay. So if you say that, okay, this is my life, it's my decision, that's not how it works. Sometimes your decisions impact others. You have to see, what kind of impact it has on others. Others could be 5 people, 10 people, sometimes 100 people in an organization. Okay, same thing at home also. You make some decision. So you are not the only person who is liable. Who is going to be affected by this. There will be other people who will get affected by this. So you have to think of what is best. People can at the end ridicule you, they can make, they can say that, okay, this decision was wrong. But as long as you are sure that, you have taken into account different aspects of it, and then you have come at a decision, that is perfectly fine. Okay. Because, but the thing is, you have to think through. Okay. At the end, no decision is a perfect decision, by the way. That is also another thing that I must tell you. Okay. Okay. So from this particular, slide, so what we see here is, we have to look at decisions not at whether it is at our workplace or at home, specifically at workplace. A decision should not be a spur of the moment, instantaneous, thing. It should be a process. One has to go through a process to arrive at an effective and correct decision. Okay. If it is a process, then you have to look at several alternatives and then choose the alternative that best suits you and the people who are dependent on that decision. And also, it is something that elides or excludes the decisions that could actually impact others as well as the organization. It's a conscious and cognitive process. Okay, because the moment you make a decision which is not rational, then that will have impact on others, and that decision will impact the lives of not just you as an individual, but others as well as the organization. Okay, that is why decision making is extremely crucial. Okay, a good decision making is extremely crucial. Anything anybody would like to ask from what I have discussed so far? Is there any question, any query? Okay, if there are no queries, so I'll just move on to the next slide. I told you earlier that decision making is a process, a conscious and cognitive process. So what I will kind of, underline the same thing further by saying that decision making is a rational process. Okay, a rational process. It's a process, okay, in the brain which takes responsibility of monitoring planning. Anybody would like to explain what does that mean, monitoring planning? Anyone? No? Okay. So when we talk about monitoring planning, it basically means, there is a plan that has to be in place, especially for decisions which are going to impact a lot of other people. Okay. The brain should also cognitive flexibility. Cognitive flexibility would basically mean you have to adapt your mind, your mental process should be able to adapt to changing situations. It's not that you take a particular decision and stick to it forever. You have to see whether that decision is something, you should be ready to look at circumstances where your decision can actually change. You should not just come up with one idea, fixed idea, but this is what my decision is going to be. Okay. Then it also involves abstract thinking about various possibilities, not just concrete possibilities, but abstract thinking, initiation of proper action, okay, and then inhibition of inappropriate actions. Okay. See, because earlier also I told you The moment you take one course of action, you choose one course of action, or you decide to do one thing, that basically means you have decided not to do several other things. So you have to also decide what are the inappropriate actions that you did not indulge in. Okay, so this is what also is decision making. Okay, and it helps attentional process in order to select related sensory information. Okay, you have to, I mean, you have to be completely, focused on the job at hand. Okay, your attentional process has to be there, because otherwise, I mean, your mind will not be able to factor in all the other information, that other relevant information that you are going to get. Okay, so that is why it is a rational process. If you are not focused for whatever reason, because we are human beings. Yeah, is there a query?
अब नहीं मिल रहा, उस समय मिल रहा था ना.
Okay, I would request others to
रोज
please,
opportunity थोड़े
mute
आता है.
yourselves. Kindly mute yourselves, because I hear some other voices also. Yeah, thank you. Decision making is an important part of all
जो है उसको
scientific.
खाना देंगे रहने सर.
Dr. Srivastava, yeah, thank you. Okay, so decision making is an important part of all scientific decisions, and specialists are trying to present their knowledge to domains in which decisions are structured. It's not just about specialists, I mean, we all are also, specialists in certain things. Even when, you may not think that you are specializing in one thing, you actually specialize in certain things, where you may be a teacher who has been teaching a certain course for a long time, so you become a specialist in that. Doesn't have to be a research specialist, okay? But whatever it is, okay, you need to, I mean, ensure that, you are, you are taking decisions which are going to impact others, okay? And then because of your, decisions, the things that you are presenting in your own domain, they are also done in a structured manner. The example that I have given is in medical sciences, clinical and therapeutic decisions are made when diagnostic steps of a certain patient are passed, and then suited therapy shall be administered. So decisions are made depending on the situation. In that case, the situation in the in a medical, in a hospital, certain decisions have to be made. But there are times when you also need to, in academics, we know that okay, we are handling a particular PhD scholar. So how do we handle that particular PhD scholar? If you are guiding students, you need to take appropriate decisions. What kind of area we need to choose for that student? Okay, so it's a collaborative kind of decision. So, but you have to take into account all of these things. Okay. But we're talking about not just decision making at work, but also at home. So when it comes to personal issues, the process comprises less rationality. Less rationality does not mean that it will not be a cognitive process, or it will not be conscious process. Okay, but the fact is, unlike workplace, here you can afford to be slightly less rational. Okay, because you're dealing with home, so there are more matters of emotions than I mean. So basically, there is more matter of heart than of mind. But mind also is involved. The basis of most of our decisions are our behaviors and actions. Our selections, preferences, and decisions are influenced by information that have their impacts through unconscious paths and apparently have no direct link to our ongoing decision making. Okay, so those are certain things that happen at at home, but that does not mean that the decision making at work is a rational process, and decision making at home is not a rational process at all. So when we are talking about decision making as a process, and then we are talking about decision making as a rational process, what we are basically discussing is that decision making at work, involves more, rational kind of behavior than at home. Okay. Does anyone have any queries so far? Anyone would like to ask something? Okay. Then let's talk about some types of decisions. These are things that one should know. So that first of all, programmed decisions, and then we'll talk about non-programmed decisions. Programmed decisions are basically automated responses. Okay, those kind of decisions, which are more, let's say, I wouldn't say use the word clerical, but they are decisions that in this sort of situation, this is the response that I give. Okay, so those kind of decisions you have to take on a frequent basis. Okay, for example, before you come to class, you make simple and habitual decisions such as what to wear, what to eat, which route to take as you go to and from home and school. School as in a school of I mean, let's say humanities and social sciences or department. Okay, okay. So those are decisions which are kind of programmed decisions. They have been programmed into you. So you don't have to worry too much about it. Okay, you don't have to worry too much about those decisions. Okay, these are automated responses. You know you have to do this because you take classes on a regular basis. So you know these sort of things. You don't need to their processes, but the processes are already done. So you just have to follow the same kind of routine. So that is a programmed decision. Okay. Now when I said that the responses are automated responses there. Okay. What are the automated responses? The automated response we use to make these decisions is called the decision rule. These are certain phrases that you also need to remember. Okay. Because when you discuss with others about decision making, etc., you could use these terms. Okay. So program decisions, like I said, program decisions are decisions for which you don't need to unnecessarily worry too much, because those are things that you do on a regular basis. I gave you the example. Teaching in a class, same class you have been teaching, same kind of course you have been teaching. So what to wear, which way to go to, because those things you already kind of are programmed to know. Okay. So you don't have to worry too much about, you don't have to spend a lot of time in coming up with specific decisions, because those are programmed decisions. Okay. The responses are automated. The automated response we use to make these decisions is called decision rule. For example, the restaurants face customer complaints as a routine part of doing business. Almost all restaurants, they face complaints from the customers. And because complaints are a recurring problem, responding to them may become a program decision. If the restaurant is getting similar kind of complaints on a regular basis, they don't have to worry too much. Unless it's very new kind of complaint. Okay, so they have specific kind of response to it. Automated response. This is called it's a decision rule. Okay, so for example, if the restaurant may enact a policy stating that every time there is a valid customer complaint, the customer should receive a free dessert, which represents a decision rule. Okay, so those are program decisions. In academics, you can think of, let's say there are certain complaints that are coming from, suppose you are an academic administrator, you are a dean or head of the department, or you are the director, and faculty members routinely come with certain complaints. Okay, that we don't have this facility, etc. So certain things, okay, these are genuine complaints. Okay, these are and these are recurring problems. So for this, solutions. So that you tell them every time. So that is a program decision. But what is more, what would require more, kind of, rational aptitude from you is the non-programmed decisions. Okay, these are unique and important decisions which require more of conscious thinking. You have to gather information and careful consideration of alternatives, which was not the case with programmed decisions. Okay, so I have given one example again from the sector of dining, etc. But you can think of other examples. Okay, a crisis situation also constitutes a non-programmed decision for companies. Suppose for companies or institutes or in our academics, if there's a crisis situation, something that not the regular complaint. A regular complaint will have a programmed decision. If there's a crisis, for example, let's say the PhD program that one has or UG program that one has certain legal issues or certain other things, then you have to, as an administrator, you have to really think what to do about it. That's a crisis situation. So that will require you to think of as many alternatives as possible. You have to gather as much information. You, not necessarily as an individual, as a group, you can assign jobs, but those are non-programmed decisions. Okay. So far what we have discussed is the first 25-30 minutes. We have talked about the fact that, when we think of decision making, whether at work or at home, process, it's not a spur of the moment thing. A moment is a moment, we think of it as a process, as a cognitive process. Okay. Then we say that, okay, and the decision making is a rational process. I gave examples of how it is a rational process. And we also said that, at workplace, it is more rational compared to at home. Does not mean that at home, there is no rationality involved in this process of decision making. Okay. So and then we talked about two types of decisions at least. One is the programmed decisions, where you don't really have to use your brain as much. You don't have to consciously think of a lot of things. Because that is something that you usually do. I gave examples, okay? And then you have non-programmed decisions, where you are presented with unique situations, crisis situations. That is where you need to think of as many alternatives as possible. As you have to gather as much information as possible. Then probably consult stakeholders and then take decision. Okay, so far so good. Any queries? Anything anybody would like to ask? No queries? Okay. Then let's talk about three categories of decision based on the level at which they occur. Okay. So what I have talked about here is strategic decision, tactical decision, operational decision. Okay. So basically, if you're an academic administrator, let's say you're a dean, head of a department or a director, then there are certain decisions which are strategic. Okay. And those strategic decisions set the course of an organization. Okay, set the course for an organization. For example, you may think of something like, should we collaborate with another research institute? Okay, should we have a memorandum of understanding (MOU) with another institute, academic institute or research institute? So those are strategic decisions. So you need to there think whether this decision would be beneficial for my institute. Would the quality of research increase? The quality would, would increase in my institute if I do this or if we do this. So those are strategic decisions. So usually people at the top level, at the administrative level, they take those decisions. But then second kind of decisions are tactical decisions. Okay, so the decisions are about how things will get done. For example, you are a project investigator. You have brought a project to your institute. So how should we help facilitate this collaboration? Okay, you are collaborating with others. You are the principal investigator. I believe many of you are, doing projects, government projects, UGC projects, MHRD projects, etc. I hope some of you are doing at least, if not all. That when you collaborate, or somebody else is bringing a kind of work to your institute, a project work. How do we facilitate this collaboration? So those are tactical decisions. Okay, and then there are operational decisions. Operational decisions refer to decisions that employees make each day to make the organization run. For example, you are a researcher. Okay, so how often should I communicate with my new collaborators? Collaborative work. How often do I communicate? So that's the level of at the employees, at the researchers. We are talking about academics mostly. So that is where you have to think of operational decision. It can work in a corporate sector, but also in academics. It can work in both places. So based on the level at which they occur, you can have three categories of decision: strategic decision, tactical decision, and operational decision. Now, when you think of steps of the rational decision, these are the things that you need to do. I hope you can see the slide. First, you have to identify the problem. Then you have to establish decision criteria on what are the things that you are deciding. Okay, decision criteria, like what are the factors that you need to factor in. Okay, so that you can come up with a particular decision. That you have to, while taking this decision, I will look into this, and this factor. Okay.
Hello.
That is, yes.
Sir, can you please make it slideshow?
Is it not slideshow right now?
No, it's not
It is
visible.
The slideshow is on. The slideshow is on.
Slideshow, no?
But
Yeah,
it's
it's
not
slideshow is
visible.
on.
Here.
Yes, it is visible.
It is visible. It is visible. Yes, the slideshow is on. Madam, please look into your device. There is some problem there on your side. Sir, please continue.
Okay. Thank you, Professor Mishra. Okay. So, so when you think of the steps of the rational decision, the first thing you have to identify the problem. Then you have to establish decision criteria. What are the factors that you need to factor in to come up with a particular decision? Okay. Then the next thing is, you don't just decide this may be the criteria. You have to decide whether those criteria are enough, sufficient, to take a decision which will take care of all the stakeholders. If it's a decision that is going to impact others, and usually at workplace or at home, when you take a decision, usually they impact others. It is very rare that there is a decision that you take at workplace that will not impact others. Your own decisions will impact others. It does not mean that you have to be at a high level in the hierarchy for your decision to impact others. Whatever level you are in, whatever decision you take, that will impact others. You decide not to work, let's say. That I don't decide to, I will decide I'll not work. So it will impact you adversely, of course. It will impact you adversely. You will not get promoted. You will probably, lose your job eventually, but will also unfortunately impact others. So I'm just giving one, example, very, general kind of example. But the point is, you have to, you have to identify the problem. What is exactly the problem? Solve that problem. You have to not just come at a decision directly or immediately or on the spur of the moment. That will be a wrong thing. So you have to go through the process where you have to establish decision criteria. What are the factors that you need to factor in? And then weigh in those decision criteria. Are they the right ones? That means have a second thought about it. Then think of the alternatives. What are the possible alternatives that are existing out there? What are the possible alternatives? That means I told you in the beginning also, you have to think of the alternatives. These are the alternatives. If I take this alternative, that means if I take this course of action, what are the implications? What are the implications? And then you have to think about the other alternatives. What are the possible, reactions? What are the possible results? How are they going to impact me and others and the organization, or at home, my family members, or even relatives. So all of those things. Okay, so evaluate the alternatives. Choose the best alternative. Now, moment I say choose the best alternative, see, the alternative that you choose will depend on what I have discussed earlier, that you have already established the decision criteria, that these are the things that I need to keep in mind. And then you have to look at it again to see whether those kind of criteria are good enough. Okay, and then evaluate different possible alternatives or solutions to that problem, and then identify the best one as far as you are concerned. After that, it's not possible that your decision will satisfy every single person. That is not going to happen. Okay, but in your heart, you know that, okay, you have made a conscious decision, a rational decision, a decision keeping in mind your own interest, of course, but the interest of others to the extent possible. Okay, so then the next thing is to implement that course of action, and then also evaluation. You have to implement and also evaluate whether by taking that action, did you do the right thing? So that this actually is the right way of looking at it, going about taking a decision in a rational, conscious manner. Okay. Yeah. So at any point, please feel free to intervene. Then some of the points that you need to remember are that make sure that you establish your decision criteria before you search for alternatives. In the previous slide, I told that first, when you identify the problem, you need to find, you need to decide the, decision criteria, different aspects. But you establish that decision criteria before searching for alternatives. Otherwise, what will happen is you will choose some alternative, and then because you like that alternative, then after that you decide, this alternative is good, because if I take this alternative, then these other things also will be taken care of. Don't do that. First, you think of what are the things that you need to take care of, then think of alternatives. You got what I'm saying? It's a simple thing. Don't first decide I want to do this and then justify the decision. First, you think of some of the decision criteria, and these things have to be done, and then decide the alternatives and choose the alternative. Got it? Because if you don't do it, if you choose the alternative first and then accordingly decide your decision criteria, that will prevent you from liking one option so much that you set your criteria accordingly. That's not a right thing. That's not the right way of search for alternatives. Prevent you from making such mistakes. If you accept the criteria before searching for alternatives, you will not make such mistakes. Many of us take decisions, and then our ego comes in, and then we then try to justify, oh, this is the right thing, I did this. That is fine. So you have to justify your actions, But before taking that action, before taking the decision, it is important that you set the decision criteria first. So these are the things that need to be taken care of. These are the different aspects. After deciding that, then you think of alternatives, not the other way around. I hope this is something that you understand. Otherwise, I mean, as human beings, we tend very rarely we might meet people, unfortunately, who would accept their mistakes and would say sorry, I made a mistake. You don't meet people like that very often. Usually, because that's a human tendency. Most people would like to justify that they're always right. Okay, so rightly or wrongly. But the point is, if you want to really justify yourself, first establish the decision criteria, then choose alternatives, and then decide the alternatives, and finally choose the quote unquote best alternative. Why I'm saying best within quotes is because it can still be subjective, despite your best efforts, despite all the rational processes that you go through. There is an element of subjectivity. Okay, so no two persons can come up with the exact same decision. There will be some changes, some differences. Okay, but the point to remember is that you have to do it the right way. What is the right way? I have been discussing that for the last 40 minutes. I hope that is something that is clear to you. And the next thing that you need to remember is the decision-making model involves a number of sometimes unrealistic assumptions as well. It assumes that people completely understand the decision to be made. Again, I mean, that's the difference between being idealistic and being pragmatic and being, real. Okay, being pragmatic. Okay, so don't assume that everybody will understand your decisions, and don't assume that everybody would know that. Okay, even only these choices. Okay, okay. So don't, you make the best, decision according to your circumstances, according to your decision criteria, according to what you conceive as the best among the several alternatives that present themselves to you. But don't, try to get, kind of some sort of validation from others all the time, because people may not actually understand your circumstances, your, I mean, thinking process. Okay, so so don't, I mean, go that way. So think of yourself in the sense that, see your circumstances, see the decision-making criteria, okay, and then, think of the alternatives. Do it rationally, do it in a conscious and cognitive, manner. Use your cognitive, faculty, and then take that decision. Okay. And moreover, even if we had access to all the information that was available, because at the end of the day, I said that certain decisions would require you, especially non-programmed decisions, not the programmed ones. I hope you remember. Programmed ones, programmed decisions are decisions that you take on a daily basis, so you don't have to really think too much about it. I told you, like taking a class, what to wear, how to go about it, so those things. But when it comes to non-programmed decisions, you need to gather information, collect information, etc. But fact is, you cannot collect all information. It's not possible. And even if we had access to all the information that is available, it could be challenging to compare the pros and cons of each alternative and rank them according to your preferences. So be, go through this process, invest, yourself completely especially when you're taking a non-programmed decision. But also understand that, as human beings, there is a limitation on what we can and what we cannot do. And don't expect others to understand that all the time. Okay. Right? But you should have your justifications. You should be convinced that these are the best possible decisions under the given circumstances. Fine? I hope this makes sense. Okay. Now making good decisions. Now here I would talk about a specific word that I would like you to remember. The word is satisfies. You can see that I have written that in red. Satisfies. S-A-T-I-S-F-I-C. Satisfies. You are familiar with the word satisfy. You are familiar with the word suffice. Suffice as in to be sufficient. It's a term. The word satisfies. Okay. I'll share the slides, of course. I mean, I've already shared the slides, so you will get it soon today, I'm sure. So you can go through the slide again. But remember the term satisfies. It's a term coined by Herbert Simon. So what is the meaning of satisfies? Satisfy refers to accepting the first alternative that meets your minimum criteria. You understand what I'm saying? That means you are not going that extra mile. You are not working that extra hard to find some proper solutions to something. Okay. So you just, you set a minimum criteria. Okay, these are nothing. You can do that. I'm not saying satisfies is a wrong thing. Sometimes it is right, but there are times when you have time constraint. You have time constraint, but you have to take some decision. So obviously, you think, okay, in this short period of time, okay, in this short period of time, how am I going to come up with a solution to this problem? So you think of the some alternatives, set some minimum criteria, okay. Okay. Please mute yourselves. Okay. So see this particular term, basically talks about accepting the first alternative that meets your minimum criteria. This is a term satisfies. It's taken from two words: satisfy and suffice. To be sufficient. Okay, suffice. The term is satisfies. So this basically means especially when you have time constraint, you can do this. You choose minimum possible criteria and then a best possible alternative that will satisfy that, or in fact the first alternative that you can think of that will satisfy that minimum criteria. That is enough. That is called satisfies. Usually, is that a good thing? Most probably no. Most probably no. But we must also acknowledge that there are instances when satisfies is perfectly okay. Especially if you have to take decisions in a very little period of time. There is time constraint. Okay. Because sometimes individuals knowingly limit their options to a manageable set and choose the first acceptable alternative without conducting an exhaustive search of the alternatives. Now, this may seem to be a wrong process, which it is, especially if you have got enough time. You have been lazy, or you have not been active, you have not been proactive, you have not spent enough time even when you had time. Then satisfies is a wrong thing. Otherwise, choosing the first alternative that comes to your mind that satisfies your minimum criteria, that is perfectly okay. I hope you understand. There are two sides to this thing called satisfies. Okay. So basically, it's a term coined by Herbert Simon from the two words satisfy and suffice. It refers to accepting the first alternative that meets your minimum criteria. Okay. Now, satisfying is similar to rational decision making. The main difference is that in the rational decision making, rather than choosing the best option, which you do in the rational one, and maximizing the potential outcome, the decision maker saves cognitive time and effort by accepting the first alternative that meets the minimum threshold. I hope that this difference between satisfies and rational decision making is clear to all of you. Is that clear? The term satisfies and how it is different from rational decision making?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay, so let's now go to the next slide. Intuitive decision making. Okay. Now we talked about satisfies, we talked about rational decision making. Then we can also think of another kind of alternative, which is called intuitive. All of you are familiar with the word intuitive. Intuitive decision making. So it has emerged as an alternative to other decision making processes. This model refers to arriving at decisions without conscious reasoning. You understand the word intuition, right? That okay, you feel that okay, maybe this may be the right thing to do. You feel, not realize, not contemplate, but you feel. Intuition. You understand? All of you, I believe, understand the word intuition. Okay. So without conscious reasoning, when you take decisions or arrive at decisions, that is called intuitive decision making. Academicians, especially those in administrative positions, like heads of departments, deans, vice chancellors, directors, especially those, academicians, especially those in administrative positions, make decisions under challenging circumstances, including time pressure, constraints, a great deal of uncertainty, changing conditions, and highly visible and high stakes outcomes. Because there are decisions, that they make, sometimes, would impact others a lot. It will be visible. It's high stakes. Okay. So it makes sense that they would not have the time to use the rational decision making model. Now, this is not to say that's a good model, but like I said, we cannot always think of the idealistic kind of perfect solutions. You have to understand people go through different circumstances, different challenging circumstances. So because of various reasons, because of various constraints, okay, people in academics and in other places, people who are in charge of taking those big, quote unquote, big decisions, they may be under different kinds of constraints, including time constraints. So they may not have time to use rational decision making model where you have to go through all that process. Okay, so the intuitive decision making model is something that they resort to. This is a model that argues that in a given situation, experts making decisions scan the environment for cues to recognize patterns. If you are in that position, you will understand, okay, in these circumstances, this is what happens, and this is the kind of decision that you take. So they will kind of find a kind of pattern that they will recognize, and they will also understand that if you take this course of action, this will probably be good, and that is based on their prior experience, because they cannot always think of what to do, what not to do, etc. Get what I'm saying? Going through that long, strenuous, process, the rational process of decision making. That does not mean rational process of decision making is not good. In fact, that's the best one. But what I'm saying is, just like earlier we talked about satisfies, in intuitive decision making also sometimes, people, because especially those who are in administrative positions, they have to take these decisions. Okay, but then they have to find some patterns, and those patterns they can see from their previous experiences. So then they take some decisions. Okay, in less amount of time. Okay, the key point here is that only one choice is considered at a time. Novices are not able to make effective decisions this way because they do not have enough prior experience to draw upon. What this basically means is people who are new, novices, they should not resort to intuitive decision making. Intuitive decision making is for those who have some prior experience. Some imagine a lot of prior experience. Okay. Secondly, they should be in a position, where they can identify patterns. What is good, what is bad, overall patterns when they look at that particular problem and contextualize in that scenario. Okay. This is not for novices. This is not for people who are less experienced. This is for people who are at higher positions, have a lot of experience. Okay, and then they can identify patterns. So this is another model of decision making. So rational decision making, then the satisfies that kind of model, and then intuitive decision making. Any questions? Anything you would like to ask? Anyone? Okay. The next one is a creative decision making. Okay. In addition to the rational decision making, intuitive decision making models, as well as satisfies, where you choose the first possible alternative. Okay. Creative decision making is a vital part of being an effective decision maker. Okay. First you recognize the problem. That is the problem recognition. Then the next steps are immersion, incubation, illumination, verification, and application. Immersion. Okay. You have to immerse yourself in what that decision is. Key to success in creative decision making is having or acquiring expertise in the area being studied. You immerse yourself. It's very self-evident, the term. Incubation. Take some time. Okay. Take some time. First, you identify the problem. Okay. You immerse yourself, study about it, but then don't take a decision immediately. Incubation period in which you set that problem aside. Don't think about it for a while. Okay. And then unconsciously, you are making decision about it. Okay. But don't think about it consciously. Incubate. Take a time for incubation. Illumination or the insight moment is when the solution to the problem becomes apparent to the person. Sometimes when it is least expected. I'm not talking about that eureka moment when a scientist discovers something. Every single person can have that eureka moment, provided you follow this process. Okay. So you study the problem, immerse yourself in the problem. Especially if there are problems or issues where you have enough time. Obviously, if you don't have enough time, you cannot do this. Okay. Immerse yourself in that, and then study it from all angles. Then incubate. Don't keep that aside. Stay away from it. Unconsciously, your mind will be thinking about it. Okay. At that point, don't worry about it. But unconsciously, you would be thinking about it, and then when you come back to it, or sometimes even before you come back to it, in your mind it will be clear. Okay, maybe this is the best possible solution. That is the eureka moment that we are talking about here. Okay, and then sometimes when it is least expected, you can come with that kind of illuminating moment. And then the verification and application stage happens when the decision maker consciously verifies the feasibility of the solution and implements decision. So after the eureka moment, you don't just decide that this is the right thing. This most likely will be the right decision, but then you have to also verify it later. Okay, and then see its application, whether this is going to be useful. Okay, so this is called the creative decision making process, where you involve yourself in immersion, incubation, illumination, verification, and application. I hope that is clear to you. Okay, so there's some models of different models of decision making. Okay, rational model, creative decision making model, intuitive decision making model. Choosing the first alternative that satisfies the minimum criteria. In other words, that model which takes into account the what satisfies. So there are the 4 kinds of models of decision making that we talked about. Now, some of the characteristics of decisions are, I told you earlier, we have primarily 2 categories: programmed decisions, non-programmed decisions. Programmed decisions are decisions that you take on a regular basis, if not a daily basis. They're structured in a routine manner. They're repetitive, recursive. Repetitive information is always available to you. You know it inside out, and they don't have long-term consequences usually. Non-programmed decisions are problems that are new to you, not the old ones. Old ones, repetitive ones, you know how to deal with them. That's okay. Non-programmed decisions are new, unstructured, complex due to lack of established procedures and little information, with long-term consequences, and requires judgment and creativity. These are the characteristics of decisions. Okay. Now, some of the decision-making conditions, conditions as in, that you can get. Okay. Certain decisions, there will be certainty. Okay, when you're making some, decisions, that, this decision I can take because there is a lot of certainty about it. That means, that these are the only alternatives that are available. That means you're certain about the alternatives. There's no uncertainty there. The available alternatives and their costs or benefits are certain. That is the certainty is there in decision making. Okay, and then risk. Under risk conditions, all available choices and their potential costs and benefits are known, but the outcomes are sometimes in doubt. See, the difference between being certain about certain particular problem and its solution and alternatives and consequence, is that in certainty, when you think of certainty, there is a certain set of alternatives, you are certain about it. Okay, then you're also certain about the respective benefits of each of those. You are certain about it. Or costs, the problems. If you take this decision, use this alternative, what are the problems? There is certainty about it. Risk is, you may know that these are the available choices. Okay, these are the possible costs and benefits, but you are not particularly sure that if you take this decision or if you choose this particular alternative, the outcomes would be this. Outcomes are not certain. So there is an element of risk there. And then the last one is the absolute uncertainty. So here, you are not sure about the alternatives. You are not sure how those alternatives are going to play out, what kind of outcomes will happen. So these decisions, eventually, if we are not certain about any of this, then that will be, decisions will be ambiguous. They will not be very clear to others. There will be lack of clarity in you and others in how those decisions are made, what the decisions actually are about, and they will be intangible, difficult to decipher, and highly unusual. Okay, so if you really want to take decisions, the best thing would be to use if your decisions of certainty, that means alternatives are certain, outcomes are certain, then your decision would be a proper decision. Otherwise, there will be either complete uncertainty, an element of risk. Sometimes, it is unavoidable that you take some decisions which will have that element of risk. Okay, so these are some of the decision-making conditions. But everyone would prefer to have the first one where there is certainty. Okay, yeah. And then some of the barriers to decision-making would be, psychological biases, where subjective biases to interfere with objective decision-making. Again, this could be at home, where you have biases, in favor of certain family members, some relatives, or against workplace also. These are not, ideal things, but the problem is we don't live in an ideal world. So what I'm not telling you that, we have to get rid of these psychological biases. Okay. We should not let our own personal feelings and emotions to creep into the decision-making process. Yes, that is the ideal scenario. But we're human beings, sometimes in these things do play a role, unfortunately. The least that we could do is to, understand that we possibly may have these biases. We possibly may have these biases. If you acknowledge that, that's the first step in, ensuring that, you try to actually minimize the biases, if not completely eliminate them. I just got a, message to, share the slides after the briefing. Yeah, sure. I mean, actually, I've shared with Professor Mishra. We will be sharing with you later. Okay. Yeah. Then the nature of decision framing. So a decision frame refers to the perception held by the manager, or in this case, administrator, in terms of gains or losses associated with the outcome of a decision. Choosing between losses is a choice between risky alternatives. So you have to frame the decision. You have the nature of decision framing is where as an administrator, or you perceive that these are certain things that you can do. If you do this, these will be the gains, these will be losses. Okay. So if that is the case, then you have to see whether both outcomes will be losses, or in one there is a certain loss. You can think of academics also. And in another, there is an element of risk. So obviously, you choose the element of risk that is more preferable than complete, loss. Okay. In terms of, maybe taking a PhD scholar, having a PhD program, having a particular, kind of project. Because it's not just enough to get a project from MHRD or UGC. You have to also know what kind of work it entails, what kind of manpower you have, and your own potential as well as your group. So all of these things you have to frame, because at the end of the day, if you get a project and don't do justice to it, it may actually be counterproductive. Okay, so the nature of decision framing is something that also is important. Illusion of control. Develop a sense that they can influence outcomes even when they have no control over events. Sense of overconfidence. That can happen, in the workplace, at home, especially at home. You feel, it depends. Like some families are matriarchal, some are patriarchal. As a matriarch, you may feel that you have control, but you may not actually have control. So sometimes, if people listen to you all the time, you sense, you have a sense of overconfidence and illusion of control. In the workplace also, if there is somebody in an administrative position, everybody says yes all the time. So he or she may develop that kind of sense of overconfidence. It will give an illusion of control. So this may backfire. This may actually become a major barrier in your decision-making process, because you are not getting any critical feedback. You are only, getting the feedback which pampers your ego. Okay. So again, if you are in that position, you have to also realize whether you are becoming overconfident, whether the lack of absolute, lack of any criticism from anyone is not a good thing at all. If that is what is happening to you, that's even as a teacher, when you go to class and you feel that all the class, every student is appreciative of your efforts, that's not a good thing. Okay, try to get, that means you are not getting proper feedback. Okay? If you get proper feedback, there is always an element of improvement. You can always improve. Okay, so otherwise, you will take decisions which you think are right, because nobody challenges those decisions. So that illusion of control is something that becomes a major barrier in decision making, whether at workplace or at home. Time. Now, time, you could usually, people would think, okay, time means less amount of time is a problem, because then you have to take hasty decisions, sometimes incorrect decisions. You cannot go through that process, the one that we earlier identified as the rational process. But the other way around also sometimes can be counterproductive, can be, a problem if you are not taking it seriously. Because if you have less time, there's a problem. You can take hasty decisions. But if you have too much time, that can also be a problem, especially if you feel there is a lot of time. So I can make my decisions, at the appropriate time. So basically, you don't use that time properly. So you develop a casual attitude to it. That also is a problem. That can also be a barrier to decision making. Okay. Now, as we take decisions as individuals, but as groups also we take decisions. In fact, let me point out that not a single decision is completely individual based. Even as an individual, you're taking a decision, it impacts others. I've told you earlier, and you subconsciously, if not consciously, take the decision, keeping in mind how it is going to impact not just you, but people around yourselves. Okay, you may think that doesn't happen. People are selfish sometimes. They think only about themselves. No. Even then, subconsciously, there are, the decisions they take has to do with how others are going to perceive, how they're going to impact it, etc. Okay. But anyway, so in academics, different, we have, we collaborative research. Even as teachers, we share notes among ourselves. As administrators, we have to take others along with us. So usually, group decision making, it's something that is there, and this is something good. A diversity of groups facilitates better quality decisions. If you take people who are of similar kind of ideology, okay, or similar kind of work ethics, that's not always the right thing. The more diversity there's more different ideas would come in. It will allow for better decisions. Okay. Otherwise, same kind of ideology, same kind of people, you will not, the group will not come up with decisions that will constitute, the benefits of, diverse groups. So diversity is a good thing in a group. Okay. Sometimes, you may feel awkward. You feel that, okay, if everybody had agreed with one thing, it would have been nice, but that's not always the right thing. Group decision making allows a greater number of perspectives and approaches to be considered. People have different perceptions of reality. People have different ways of looking at things. So keep those things into account, and then take a decision which may not satisfy every single person, but will take into account what others think, and then at least ensure that the minority opinions are also heard. The moment you do it, then it is a good thing, because in an organization, even at home also, when you take this sort of decisions, keeping in mind everybody's suggestions, you won't be able to satisfy every single person, but at least listen attentively to everyone, especially the minority opinion in an organization or at home. Then what happens is, at the end, when you take a decision, everybody has a sense of ownership of the final decision. That's a nice thing. Complete, unanimity, may not be possible. Completely, everybody, a complete consensus is not possible. But a sense of ownership would be there, and that's a good thing. Okay. And the moment there is a sense of ownership of the decision, people will be more committed to the decision. Okay. And by increasing the number of people involved in the process, it is more likely that a greater number of people will understand why the decision was made. Instead of just having one-upmanship, where you kind of dictate some decisions on others just because you can. That's not the right thing. Okay. And then if you are not dictating, you are taking everybody into account, everybody's opinion into account. It facilitates implementation of that decision. Okay. But there are always pros and cons for everything. For group decision making, the cons are, I told you about the pros, the positives. The negatives are sometimes group decisions take longer to arrive at, and this can be problematic when speed of action is key. And groups can be indecisive and may opt for satisficing. Remember satisficing? Anybody can tell me what was satisficing? Groups can be indecisive and opt for satisficing rather than maximizing.
Satisficing is when we accept the particular decision which will meet our minimum requirements.
Yes, very good. The first possible alternative that meets our minimum requirement. So if there's a group, sometimes that can also happen, because otherwise it will be a time-taking process. Okay, so the point is there are positives and negatives to everything, but group decision, I told you about the positives and negatives. So it's up your call sometimes, whether you have to involve the group or whether you take decision, individually. One would say that group decision making, when you are taking others into account, and even the minority opinion is heard, that's a good thing, because then that will lead to a sense of ownership of the final decision, and implementing would be easy, because everybody knows that this is how the process was, this is how the decision was made. Okay. Then decision making specifically in household, because in household you think of it as one home, it's my home. Everybody says it's my home. Like there are 5 members, every single person says it's my home. So it's treated as a single entity. Okay, with generalized reciprocity that the father, mother, children, the grandchildren, so all of them, so they feel that this is our place, it's our home. So reciprocity is more, the sense of belonging is more. Okay, and then that is why when you make some decisions or take some decisions, that means the decision making, in decision making there are distinct choices. Unlike an organization where every time some new members are coming in, old members are going, different news, alternatives are coming up. In home, the decision making becomes slightly easier, because there is some sort of uniformity, some sort of homogeneity there. Okay. So that's why there are distinct choices, and And then there is the role, sharing. Who will do what? Somebody earns money, somebody takes care of home, somebody, does other things, at home. So choices, the roles are kind of distinctly defined. This is not to say, well, we cannot generalize like this, but more or less, this is how it is, right? I believe, all of you would kind of agree with this. So decision making becomes slightly easier, uh, but then there are exceptions. It's not like every house is just a replica of each other. Okay, and then there are individual decisions sometimes, that can sometimes happen because just like in an organization, sometimes you can have dictatorial, kind of tendencies where the people in the topmost hierarchy sometimes dictate terms. In homes also, unfortunately, sometimes that happens. You may have a matriarch or a patriarch who kind of, takes decision on behalf of everyone else. Okay, so there are these problems, but we need to understand this and okay. Some of the important factors in decision making in household, like I told you earlier, different people have different kind of motivations at home, different kinds of roles. For example, sometimes, what are the different things that happen at home usually? First of all, how to run the home, who has the purchasing capability or behavior. So how do we acquire more wealth so that, the family becomes more prosperous? Okay. So this is purchasing behavior capability is one of the major factors around which some decisions are made. How do we all remain healthy, all right, well-being of its members. Okay. And also at home, there are different aspirations that we have to deal with. Okay. A child wants to play, study in a particular place, buy a certain gadget. The father has constraints, so that means there were times there is some bargaining involved. Child wants something, the parents don't want to give, there is some bargaining. Sometimes negotiations among, husband, wife, father, mother. Sometimes threats also, you do this, otherwise I will not do this. So those sort of things. So, but the primary things is purchasing behavior, well-being of its members, aspirations. These are three major things that, major factors in decision making in household. Okay. Okay. Now, yeah. So these are some of the, things that, I wanted to discuss, and I have discussed, I hope, you found this useful. So we talked about, different aspects of decision making, different types of decision making, whether it's rational process, rational kind of decision making or intuitive decision making satisfies, various things that we talked about, both at workplace and at home. And also told you that, certain times, you don't have to think too much about, about, taking a decision where everybody will, be satisfied. The point is, you have to take into account different circumstances, your decision making criteria, and then accordingly take a decision. Don't just choose a first kind of alternative or the easy route. But then, if there is time constraint or other constraints, then there are ways in which you could take this. Okay. I think time is up, and I believe I have covered whatever I wanted to cover for today. Professor Mishra, could we take up some queries? Are there queries? Maybe 1 or 2 minutes?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. So if there are some queries, anybody could, yeah. Okay, if there are no queries, Professor Mishra, you may share the slides, and I will probably meet the participants day after tomorrow in the other session, where we will specifically talk about handling emotions in decision making.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Professor Amarjit Naik. I understand that you had a busy schedule today morning because of the visit in your institute by higher authorities from your Department of Atomic Energy. But still, you could manage time. I'm really grateful to you. And thanks for your thought-provoking session. I'm grateful to you, and I hope to I hope the participants must have learned a lot from your session, because you are the coolest person I've ever seen while delivering FDP sessions. Okay. So thank you very much. We will meet again for the next session day after tomorrow.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. I will sign out now.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
So participants, I know this has been a long and tiring day for you, but nevertheless, I hope you have learned a lot of things from the 3 sessions, and you have enjoyed your first day. There have been a few queries and complaints and suggestions from your side. I have tried to summarize all and sent you a mail. Please go through the mail. I have already shared the PPTs in the mail as well as in the WhatsApp box. Some participants who have not been able to join the WhatsApp group, please collect the WhatsApp link from other members, or you can go through the mail sent by me on Saturday. Okay, if possible, I will try to send the link, but I don't know how to send the link in the WhatsApp. So please join by taking help of the links and shared to you. So I hope everything is fine. If you have got anything to say or anything to ask, you may please. Otherwise, we can stop this session. And
Sir, good evening. I have
Sir,
not
good
received
evening.
the
I have not
attendance
received
link.
the attendance link.
you will not receive it individually, madam. You will be receiving it in the chat box, and you have to give the attendance link when the session is going on. Okay, and that I don't have control over the attendance link, because my administrative office admin, the lab admin who is handling this recording and other things, he is managing that. So please be attentive and please give the attendance when the session is going on, because multiple times it is being said during the session.
Sir, can I ask you something?
Yes, madam, please.
Actually, sir, I'm not in the WhatsApp group.
See, I will try to send. I don't know. I have shared the link. You can just send me a WhatsApp message personally, and I will share the link with you. Okay. Anybody who has not been able to join the WhatsApp link because you missed the mail, you can send a WhatsApp message personally to my number, and I will share the link with you. Okay.
Okay, sir. One more thing.
Okay, sir.
Hello.
Yes, madam. Yes.
Sir, when is the? Can you please mention the timing of the sessions from tomorrow?
Tomorrow the first session is at 11. I have shared the schedule and I have shared everything with you, madam. Tomorrow the session is at 11. Please go through the mail sent by me, because it will be coming from mpmisra@cet.edu.in. Please go through the mails. Hosting देखी ना? हाँ, तो मत ना दी. ये session का record हल्ला.
Thank you, Mr. Sir.
Okay, thank you. Let us end this meeting. See
Yes.
you tomorrow by 11 o'clock. Please
Thank you,
join
sir.
in the.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes.
सर एक्चुअली मैंने फर्स्ट और तीनों किए हैं सर. जैसे थर्ड पे आप इसी साइड पे आया हुआ है उस पे अटेंडेंस मेरी सेंड हो गई. सेकंड जो सेशन का सर के थ्रू उसमें अटेंडेंस सेंड नहीं हुई सर. मेरे को नहीं मिला सर.
सर मैं वो कंट्रोल नहीं करता हूँ. मैं आपको बोल देता हूँ, मैं वो कंट्रोल नहीं करता हूँ. वो मेरे जो एडमिन हैं वो कंट्रोल करते हैं. वो वही अटेंडेंस लिंक शेयर करते हैं और बार करते हैं. ठीक है, हर एक सेशन में 3-4 बार कर रहे हैं. आपको एक टाइम में अभी इसी सेशन के चैट बॉक्स में आप जाके देखिए. अगर आप बाद में ज्वाइन करते हैं या लेट ज्वाइन करते हैं तो आपको नहीं दिखाई देगा. इस सेशन में मैं 4 बजे से मैं बता देता हूँ. 4:16 को पहली बार, 4:22 को दूसरी बार, 4:30 को तीसरी बार, 4 फिर उसके बाद.
Sir, but that link is not opening only. It is not accepting your responses.
Yes, now it will not accept because the session is already over. The admin must have stopped accepting responses. Okay.
एक्चुअली सर इसके थ्रू सेशन 3 में तो हमको पता
हाँ, सब में आपको वही करना है. मैंने इनॉग्रेशन में बिफोर आफ्टर द इनॉग्रेशन वाज ओवर आई हैव टोल्ड इट क्लियरली. So please follow that. I have sent the clarifications because I don't have any say or control over it. My admin controls things, so I cannot help it. Even if I want, I cannot help this. Okay, so please अभी सेशन 3 का किसी ने लिंक भेजा है, शेयर किया है, but I don't think it will accept because the session is already over. The recording has already been stopped. Okay.
So it is not accepting.
I said no, it will not accept.
And the third.
It will not accept.
It is not accepting.
So you have to be there, attentive, be attentive, and please give your attendance in the chat box. That is how we can manage the FDP in an online mode. Okay. Chali. Let's wind up this meeting and let's take some rest and get come back come to for tomorrow's session. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Stomach. Yeah, I did not get that. This is going to go back to rubber band from the table, rubber band. Can't hear anything.
Yeah. I was small, Rakhi used to look at that family tree and she used to be like, how Karan is like this and Jonty is like this. Makes fun of us. Me and Jonty were like this. You.